Hi. So I think we are live on YouTube. How are you doing?
I'm very well. How are you doing?
I'm doing really good. How's the weather? What would you like the weather out here today?
Not bad. I look any day where it's not raining, I find to be a good day. You can get out and about and explore. I think that's one of the honestly, that's one of the. I mean, people and it's hilarious. Irish people talk about weather all the time.
Yeah.
And people don't like the weather. But we've one of the most temperate climates in the world. It's never too new, never too hot, never too cold. I have friends in Minnesota. They can't walk to work or can't walk anywhere for about 6 months of the year. I have
Yeah.
friends in Florida or in India, and it's difficult to walk around in the middle of the day. We have it pretty good here.
Well, that's what I think. Like the day it's not raining, it's pleasant in Ireland. The day it's
Hmm.
raining, like it's just a normal day in Ireland. So that's what I think. So I think we should wait for a few minutes and let people join the webinar, and then we can start. I like your shirt though.
Perfect.
You got wearing a very good shirt.
Thank you very much.
Okay, let's see. Yeah, people might be coming soon. So how was your day today? Was it too hectic?
It was a good day. I think though every I mean I suppose it's we'll probably talk about this later. The positive immigration news last night, so that was really good.
Yeah.
But obviously some follow up in relation to that today. But I feel like we have all we all have. I certainly feel like I'm juggling ever more things in this 2020 COVID world.
I think yeah, everyone does that. So okay. So I think yeah, people have started joining. So we can start with the live. Okay. So hello everyone, my name is Pranav and I welcome you all to the webinar of Babylon Radio. Babylon Radio is the radio that celebrates cultures and is promoting the integration. We do the living in Ireland. If you go to our websites, we have different vlogs where you can check about living in Ireland, the housing, the birth and family, education, and literally everything you want to know about Ireland side by side. What are the places you want to visit? What are the things? What are the accommodation prices and things you can do here? And what is the to-do list you want here? The museum, the parks, the pubs. So anything related, any information related to Babylon and about Ireland, you can find us on babylonradio.com. So today we have Colum Cronin with us. He's the Senior International Officer at DCU. He has also worked as an International Student Ambassador at UCD and has completed his Masters from UCC in Sustainable Development. So welcome to the webinar, Colum.
Thank you very much. Delighted to be able to join you today and have a chat this evening.
We are delighted that you joined us and you agreed to have a convo with us. So the topic for today, is about the international students, because international students have been facing a lot of problems throughout the year, and there are still, I hope there are no problems in future, but what is the future for all the international students? So the topic of today would be Ireland for international students. That would be the first topic. So we know that international students have face some issues or other throughout this year, but I just wanted to know that how does 2020 looks within the administration, the university's administration? What are the issues that the universities have faced in this 2020?
Yeah, I mean, what a year! I suppose I'll preface it by saying, I mean, I'm talking in a personal capacity. I work in higher ed. I've worked in higher ed for 15 years, but very much talking in a personal capacity. And I suppose I can only talk from my experience as well. This has been certainly a challenging year for students and for universities. I think, especially when you consider that the lockdown one happened and things had to be turned around so quickly.
Yeah.
And we went from a situation where, lecturers, for the most part, were not used to giving lectures in a virtual format. And all of a sudden they had to, and they had to almost do it overnight. And that was an enormous challenge for the institutions and for lecturers and to students to get used to that, because certainly when I went to university, which wasn't that long ago, we didn't do anything. Like there weren't any classes online. You accessed the virtual learning environment, sure, but everything was done very much face to face. Everything was built around that: lectures, tutorials, your interactions. So that was obviously an enormous change and the biggest one. And then I suppose different institutions made different decisions as to announcing when they were going to go towards online teaching for this current semester. But it was obviously, in terms of, for the students and international students, the piece around making the decision on whether or not they were going to continue with their studies, if they held an offer, or were they going to defer for a year. But if they deferred, then what would that mean? What were they going to do for the year? I think there was a huge amount of work that went into trying to talk to students to see where they were at, to figure it out. And I mean, all of this was going on in the midst of a pandemic. So the sands were constantly shifting, if you were, because, the numbers, they went up, they went down, the levels of restrictions. So it's definitely been, I think, a year of uncertainty for international students. I'm happy that that I work at an institution that made the decision early to announce that it was going to go online. So it offered a degree of certainty to students, and they knew what to expect. And they've said that it will be similar for the spring semester, certainly initially. And I think that's good because it allows lecturers to plan. Again, the face-to-face piece, they're so used to that, but the virtual piece, that's a little bit different. Better to give the time. And then, if we really positive vaccine news from the UK today, if that goes well, and let's say, face-to-face and the numbers drop and face-to-face becomes possible towards the end of next semester, then that we can move to that. It's much easier, I think, to move from the virtual to the face-to-face than from face-to-face to virtual.
True. And the UK news is it's a very positive news. We all got to know today that the vaccines will be out super soon, and I hope the vaccines are out soon, that this whole pandemic things gets over. So, I myself, as an international student, I came last year from India. So our first semester was offline. So we went to the colleges, we attended the classes, but from the second semester onwards, everything went online. And right now also, everything goes online. So what will be the next semester be like? The student wants to know, will the next semesters, are there any chances the next semester will be again online, or they get the chance to go to the college and attend it in person?
Well, at DCU, we have announced that teaching will be online, definitely initially, and we will see how things go. It's just not possible to get groups together indoors, and so you have to be safe, and you have to take public health into consideration. I think you're seeing people, as we go through the pandemic, as we learn more about this virus, I've seen more library spaces be added. I've seen new ways of looking to engage. I mean, we're down to level 3 rather than level 5. That allows for some additional, meetups and things like that. So I think you will probably see more events take place on campus, and I think there definitely has been learning over the last year. When I talk to students, they obviously, they say, what they say is the academic piece has worked really well. The lecturers they've made real efforts. They've gotten in touch with them. But I think there's even been learnings in that, in terms of ensuring students get early feedback, ensuring that assessments are spaced out so that students actually get feedback early in the semester to know where they stand, and that it's not all because in person you can get a better sense of where you're at. So I think there will be consistently improvements to that. And I do think, certainly at my own institution, I know there are efforts ongoing to talk to students to see how we can best support them, how we can best meet their needs, and how we can ensure they have the best possible experience. And the piece that's obviously very difficult is the social piece, because you can't replicate the physical in the virtual. It's a different space, and it requires different sorts of engagement strategies. So, for example, if we were in university together, you've just started, and you might say, I'll go to an event, and it's a society are holding it, and maybe they're holding a coffee morning, and you go along to the coffee morning, you don't know somebody, you don't really know anybody there, but you see somebody else kind of on the periphery who's kind of on their own. You go over, you start chatting, and somebody else might come over and join your group, and you kind of get to know each other. It's very difficult to do that in a virtual space, because if you're in a big Zoom meeting, there's 40 people. Well, how do you have a sidebar conversation? Or, people are kind of thrust into it and you're asked to kind of perform. If you're a shyer, more introverted person, that's a big leap for you. But it's not how you really get to know people either. It's not like at a house party, one person goes into the middle of the room and says what their interests are, like it's done much more informally, much more on a one-to-one basis. And so that definitely is a piece that is missing, that we will always have that. Like, we're as humans, we want that interaction. And I think when I talk to students even about the support piece and the admin piece, they say that's worked really well. They are able to get in touch with their support staff, but that social piece, that's the piece that's, I think, missing really.
Well, true, because I personally feel that if a person goes to college, obviously he'll be studying and he'll be learning a lot of things, but other than that, going to college and meeting people in person also teaches you a lot of things, as it teaches you how to socialize, it develops your personality, it helps you to connect with new people. And I think everything has been missed when everything is virtually. As you rightly said, we don't like anyone in the party who's going one after another to dance in front of us. We just want everyone to dance all together and have fun in the same way. So although COVID has been really negative everywhere, it's like all the bad news we hear, all the systems are going down. Like today also we're having a webinar that's also virtual. Just imagine, everything is going virtual, and it's the first time that everybody is trying virtual things. So do you think the universities, other than, if we keep the negative things aside, are there any positive things that the university will take in mind and could use these things in future, like maybe some positive impacts also from COVID?
Yeah, I do think there have been learnings. I think the way in which we utilize technology, I think that will change. And I think, for example, the kind of the move to no longer have to present documentation, the acceptance of scan documentation. I think that is something that benefits everyone. It benefits the environment, and I think that is something that will make a real difference. I think there is huge benefits for everyone around that. I also think, like, I've been to a number of different kind of conferences or webinars like this, and I think travel will still be really important. I mean, travel is so important, but the ability to attend virtually, if you cannot travel, I do think that will remain as part of it. And I hope that, say, like, I've seen in clubs and societies, in lectures, guest lecturers from all around the world, and the ability to kind of zoom in, and people have gotten much more comfortable with that. So I think even when we return to a physical classroom, having somebody, zoom in as a guest lecturer, that they don't necessarily have to come. I think that could be a real benefit, because previously it might, you might have said no to a speaking appearance or a guest lecture or anything like that, because you're saying, well, I can't go there. Like, even if it's in Manchester and you're like, well, I can't because I have something on in the evening. Now, I think virtual technology is such, and people are comfortable with it enough that they're willing to say, yeah, let's just put you on a live link and have you done like we're doing here this evening. I think those are the sorts of things that will be really useful. Also, hopefully, there'll be learnings around even recording lectures and things like that. When I talk to students, the fact that they can sometimes go back. So if there's a difficult concept or there's something they didn't quite get, and they can go back to the recording and watch it again in their own time, and spend that extra bit of time grasping what the concept is. That is something that has been beneficial. So I think the way in which we interact with technology, the way in which we utilize technology has improved immeasurably in such a short space of time. Like, it's funny because working in international higher ed, I suppose I would have been using Zoom for the last few years, and suddenly everyone and Zoom was always really easy to use, but it just seemed, because people weren't using it, it seemed like such a difficult technology, and all of a sudden overnight it became easy for people to use. So I think hopefully maybe we've reshaped our relationship with technology.
Well, as you rightly said, that it is a positive point, because sometimes people are unable to attend or go somewhere very far away. So as it's also rightly said that technology has made the world smaller. It has made the world connected. So anyone could sit anywhere, and as I have also seen during this whole pandemic, there has been a lot of podcasts that have been started. There have a lot of been YouTube videos, YouTube things that people are going online, and they are showing their talents, showing everything. So it is also very good for the people who are introvert, because extrovert people are obviously all the time extrovert. They just come up, they just speak it. But when the people who are introvert, they are using these facilities, the virtual world, to their best and get as much opportunity as they can get. So international students, so this year, the last year, a lot of international students came in Ireland for the studies. They just attended their one semester, and since March, as the lockdown has started, they all has been in their homes. So have universities helped them in some way or the other, because they are not coming to the universities? So if they have any issue, whom do they go and talk to, and how usually did the universities help the international students in this whole pandemic thing?
Yeah, I do. I think there has been help available, and I think while it's been a very difficult period, I think Ireland can be reasonably happy with how it handled the situation in relation to international students. If you go back to March, any student, whether they were full-time or part-time, wherever they were from, if they lost their job because of the pandemic, they were able to apply for the pandemic unemployment payment, and that didn't happen everywhere, So that was really good that happened. There was a recognition that it impacted. The other thing that Ireland did was, for any students who were working, ordinarily international students can work 20 hours a week. Yeah. During that period of the first lockdown, there was a recognition that if you were still working, you were essentially an essential worker at that point, because even if you were working in retail, we needed to keep the shelves stocked. We needed to keep supply chains running. If you were working at a petrol station, you still had a job to do. So they made it so that international students could work 40 hours a week. And I think that was another positive step. And if you were to contrast the comments that were made by, say, the prime ministers of some countries about international students, and it was, they should really think about going home, and contrast that to Ireland, where, our politicians talked about the benefit of international students and welcoming international students. So I think on a national level, we did really well. And from talking to students, they still have been able to access services even remotely. So the things like the health centre, things like the career service, all of those, the math support centre, the writing support centre, all of those services have continued in a virtual sense. And now obviously it's different, but again, students tend to be, and when we talk about Gen Z, right, those students tend to be very comfortable in a virtual environment. They're in relation to one-to-one support. They're absolute. It doesn't have to be face to face. They do want kind of one-to-one, but they're fine if it's virtual. So I think that the supports have existed, and there has certainly been a lot of effort made to reach out to vulnerable students, or students who might be struggling. So I think that part has worked. It's more going back to the general point of, ordinarily, you would have a big orientation, and you'd have lots of different events, and you get the opportunity to make really strong networks in that first couple of weeks of friends, and you kind of find your feet. And even though it might be a month or 2 months later, you find that you end up with a different friend group potentially, but that first few weeks you got the opportunity to get to know people. That part, I think, that's probably the more difficult part, the friendship part for students. So there's definitely things going on, I think, around second semester to endeavor to make that a better experience.
Yeah, rightly said. And also I feel obviously we are having the virtual world right now. It's all virtually, having all the meetings, all the lectures, but till the time it's all in the reality, like if we have the virtual and the reality. So if we are into reality world where we meet people in person, I think that is very beneficial for the international students also, because just imagine if international students come abroad from various countries, they come here, and here also they are just sitting at their homes and studying. So there could be some, the backlog or something in their mind, that they have come abroad to explore the new culture, to understand the new culture, and they are just not helping, or they are just not able to adapt the new culture, and they're just sitting home and studying. So one basic question that all international students have mostly, and even me as an international students have, the placement. Because coming to Ireland, it's like people invest so much money to the universities. They come for the university, for their higher education, for better education, but the placements is one of the major issue that they always face. They have their fears that whether they get the job or not. So how has the placement been done this year? How different it was, and was it successful, or there are still many students who are like still jobless and don't have jobs?
I suppose Ireland has been fortunate up to this point that the economy has been pretty strong, and there has been a real appetite to employ graduates, and the third level graduate program that allows the stay back option for students, I think employers are now really beginning to understand that. I mean, I'm working in the sector long enough to remember when that was first introduced in 2007, right? Yeah. And that when it was introduced back then, that was still stamp 2. Okay, so we know now that students are stamp 2. Well, imagine graduates were also stamp 2, and employers couldn't differentiate who was a student and who was a graduate. So they'd say, no, I'm just not going to take the risk. And it was initially for 6 months. And so it was only in 2011 that, we got stamp 1G, and then 2017 where it became 2 years for postgraduates. And it has taken time definitely to build up a recognition amongst employers, and I think most of them now know what stamp 1G is, and they're willing to employ people on that. So that has definitely helped. I think the fact that it depends on the industry for some students. I think what undoubtedly has been hit is for the students who are arriving, the part-time jobs. I mean, they're just not there, right? Like they've been the people who are in them are staying in them. You would have ordinarily seen international students working perhaps in pubs and clubs, in cinemas, in restaurants. That just didn't exist for the last few months. So that was obviously, definitely a difficulty. But the career jobs for a significant number of industries, they were still there. If you were a graduate coming in and you were involved in tech, I mean, tech boomed. If you were involved in pharmaceuticals, that boomed. So depending on the industry you were in, yes, certainly if you were coming out and in other industries, it was difficult because COVID meant that the jobs were impacted. But in other industries where a lot of Ireland's international students, they tend to be in and around computer science, engineering, pharmaceuticals, things like that. Those students, they did have opportunities. Other students didn't. The hope is that with the vaccine potentially coming in early next year, the OECD and various others have said Ireland should rebound pretty quickly, and so I think that would be the hope. But the students that I know who have graduated have managed to find work. Perhaps not always in the area that maybe they graduated in. Yeah. But they definitely have found jobs. I think it was people coming out of more general courses that tended to take a little bit more time. If you were very specialized, if you came out with a master's in artificial intelligence, that job was there waiting for you. If you came out with a kind of a general business master's, well, then it took a little bit longer. But it does seem like people are managing to find jobs.
Yeah, rightly said. Like, as they also say, Ireland is like a IT hub. Like, most of the IT jobs are like very much IT jobs here, and non-IT students find it a bit tough, but obviously they get the job. So we have a question here, and the question is, what are the steps for mental health? Because people do feel left out. I mean, what measures could be taken? Because this is all new to us, all new to you, all new to us, everything going virtual, and the international student coming out here. What are the effects that have been done on the mental health of these students that have come abroad, and what are the measures that have universities taken to help them cope up with these mental issues if they are suffering from any?
Well, again, I think different institutions I know have done a lot of different things, and I know there have been various kind of measures put in place, various webinars held, they've tried to put supports in place. I would say for any student who feels that they are struggling, then probably what you want to do is reach out and talk to somebody, and I think it certainly is. It is a difficult time, and recognizing that that's the first step. It's okay to not be okay, and the fact that you're struggling is not a sign of weakness or anything like that. And then it's about trying to find help and support. And all of the universities, and I've worked in the three big universities in Dublin, they all have really good supports available to you. Yeah. So it's about reaching out and looking to get that support. There will be people available to help you, to talk to you, to guide you along the path, or to point you to services who will be able to help you. But I guess taking that first step, that is what is kind of so important. That I think is the and it's very often the most difficult. I recognize that, but it is the most important. So I think that if you do feel you're suffering, that is the thing to do is to reach out. I think for international students, what has probably been a challenge is when you arrived over to Ireland and you kind of were potentially straight into your classwork. So there wasn't time to pause and reflect. And we're going to now, coming up in a few weeks, everyone will get an opportunity to pause. As Ireland, kind of closes down for the Christmas holiday period. So I would say to students as we come to that, utilize that time. I would say try and have a healthy routine. I understand it can be real tempting to binge like 10 hours of Netflix, but like try and get some time outdoors. That will definitely help. You will feel the benefit for it. And I think be kind to yourself, be kind to others, reach out, even if it is just virtually. You'll be amazed at how talking to somebody makes such a difference, and just having that conversation. And I know, again, when you aren't feeling great, it is difficult to make that step, but that is one thing I think you can look to do. So take a breath. Try and have a healthy routine where you're getting some exercise, where you're not overly reliant on any type of and it's easy to get into bad habits, to not want to prepare food, to one beer leads to 2 beer leads to 3 beers every evening. You can understand it, like we are living through a global pandemic, but recognize that when you are, or if you feel that you need help, the help and support is there if you can reach out.
Yeah. Like as you rightly said, that having a good schedule is really important at this time. If you don't have any schedule, it's like you'll be more lethargic, you won't be doing more things, and that's how will get negative from inside. Because as the time in Ireland also, around 4:30 it's all night, it starts getting very dark. And just imagine if a person is getting up around 12 or 1 p.m. in the afternoon, and it's just 3 hours of sun, and then it's all dark again. So it will definitely get more of negativity into self. So we have one more question. This Anna says that I'm a postgraduate student, and as coronavirus situation has become difficult of getting jobs. So like we already have discussed this thing before, that Ireland, mostly Ireland, if you are in Ireland, as you also said, the AI job, people in artificial intelligence, they get jobs immediately. But people from different fields, like doing MBA or anything like that, they need to struggle a bit, but eventually they also get a job. But as the pandemic and coronavirus has hit, all the job markets have been down. And as you know, the rents in Dublin and rents in other counties, the rents are really high, the expenses are really high. So how hard has it made for the students, not obviously for the international students, but as for the national students, how hard is it now for getting a job than it was usually before?
Again, it really comes back to the industry, and I can understand, like it'll definitely take a little bit longer. I think for what I would say is to, if you are searching for a job, treat searching for a job like a job, and have a routine where you get up and you look online, you see if there's anything out there. Don't spend all day hitting F5 to refresh, because you'll drive yourself crazy. It's like when a couple of years ago, when you were trying to book an immigration appointment and people were just hitting F5. That will really frustrate you. Set aside a time, look and see if there's anything interesting, and then make your application if you want to. I'd also say, like, look, do a lot of reading online. There are an awful lot of resources out there. in terms of, depending on what your university you're in or institution you're in, it may be that career services are available to you still as a graduate. Yeah. Check to see if that's the case. Check to see if there are any alums or alum support groups that maybe you could get some insights from people there. And I think the biggest thing I would say is, I've sat on a lot of interview panels. Be specific in your answers. That, I think, is the biggest thing I see, particularly with recent grads, is that they have these wonderful ideas, but they don't give you a concrete example, and I think that is the biggest thing in terms of getting a job. It is about being able to point to what you did, what your role in it. And that doesn't mean you don't overplay your hand. Don't say that you created a brand new system if you didn't create the system. If you're a part of it, that's fine. But explain what the system was, explain what it did, explain your role in it. But give a concrete example. Don't just say, when they say, are you, give us an example of a time where you showed innovation. Oh, I'm innovative all the time. I come up with loads of different ideas. I've done lots of different great stuff at work. It's like, I have nothing to hang my hat on there. I don't know what that means. Give me a real specific example. That would be what I would say. I think, again, it's about, I suppose, looking to see what supports are available to you.
Yeah, you're totally right about that. So, you have been involved in DCO student recruitment activities, and you have been to different countries like India, Malaysia, Nigeria. But this year things were totally different. So, did it impact the universities in any way? Are the student intake this year are very less than compared to other years?
No, there was definitely an impact, but it wasn't. I think initially in March there was a kind of a shock about, what's this going to mean? Yeah. But I think as COVID spread across the world, and I think as people looked at it, they probably made a decision to say, if I decide not to go ahead with university, what am I going to do with my year? And so some people pressed pause, some people withdrew, but it was actually a surprisingly small number in many ways. Most students decided to continue with their education. It meant that I would ordinarily be in India, probably 3 times a year. I was there once this year. I missed out on the Diwali celebrations. I missed out on going, but it definitely did have an impact in terms of, I'm working in the sector a long time, right? We have seen the numbers go up and up and up. So that wasn't the case. I mean, they probably dipped a little this year. So that was, I think, if you looked at a graph, you'd see that it was and then dip a little. Yeah. So it did impact it in that way. But I suppose education allows for a very clear path. You know what you're going to do. If you enroll in a master's program or whatever program you engage in, right, there's going to be teaching, there's going to be learning, there's going to be assignments. And I think in the midst of a pandemic, that offered certainty for a lot of people, and so they decided they would go with it.
True. And so we have a question here, and this Rachit says that, hello international students, is the immigration process slow as compared? So do you want to put some light on the immigration process?
The immigration process has, again, and I worked in the immigration office once upon a time, a long time ago now. But I think, again, if you were to take where we were a couple of years ago, and the fact that at that point everybody in Dublin, every single person renewing had to go to the immigration office in order to either get their permission or change their permission or renew their permission. So we went from a situation where roughly, right, in 2017, we'd about 74,000 people register at the Burkey office. In 2018, we'd 86,000 people register. And last year, about 106,000 people registered at the Berkey office. Okay. So you can see that level of growth. Now, I worked in Berkey a decade ago, more than a decade ago. And at that point, there were fewer than 30,000 people registering. The building is the same size now as it was then. So I do have some sympathy for people on the ground at Berkey, because that was totally unsustainable, like making everyone go in person. And obviously the system wasn't built to I suppose deal with the level of expansion that it saw. Yeah. But the economy was booming, people were coming here to study. It was massively impacting on people's experience, and it was really unfair, and it caused a huge amount of stress. I also, I'm working in the sector long enough to remember the queues, people queuing over. Like, it began right with people queuing at like early in the morning, and then it got earlier and earlier and earlier. So by the time it ended, people were queuing overnight. And I know that we heard what about 18 months ago about people selling the appointments. If you remember that, about 18 months, 2 years ago. I don't know if you were here, but that was a thing that people were doing. I heard about it, yeah. That is not new. There used to be people who used to queue up in Berkey, right, overnight. This is where physical and virtual come together. They used to queue up in a physical sense, and then they would sell. They used to give out tickets. They'd go around and give out tickets in Berkey. They used to sell their tickets, their high numbered tickets. So that selling of appointments has existed for a long time. I will say I have seen significant improvements in the last few years. There has been, I think, a sea change there. And it is still not what I would like it to be for international students and international people. But if you now consider that pretty much only first-time registrants have to go to Berkey. So we've reduced the number of people needing to go to the office by 2/3, probably almost nearly about 70%. That's enormous that change has come in. The eradication of re-entry visas, that is significant as well. And the fact that the renewal process, as was announced last night, that you're no longer going to have to submit your passport. That's a hugely positive step that will offer a lot of reassurance to people. Ireland's immigration system is not perfect, but I am aware from talking to, like, I've seen students who wanted to come to Ireland, right? They're on these programs which are multi-institutional programs. So generally you spend one semester in one country, one semester in Ireland, and one semester elsewhere. And in order to apply for a visa anywhere, you have to be resident, right? So if you're say an Indian national who maybe wants to apply for a Schengen visa, you have to be resident in Ireland, right? You have to have your IRP card in order to do so. That's the same anywhere. If you want to apply for an Irish visa, you have to be resident country. And I've seen students who've been in a country for 6 months and haven't been able to register, and therefore haven't been able to get a visa. So it's definitely an issue. I think the world needs to realize that the immigration systems we have are kind of 20th century, and we're living in the 21st century, and people travel, and you see so many projects, right? Not just in academia, but in academia in a work sense, right? People are now working on projects where, again, they're multi-institutional. So there might have one university in Ireland, one university in Sweden, and a university in India, and people are traveling between these three institutions on kind of 3 or 4 month stints to do different types of work. So I do think that there is still room for improvement, but I definitely have seen significant improvements over the last few years. We still have a way to go. My understanding is that there will be a new, more secure appointment booking system that will come in next year. I think that will improve the process again. I mean, look, I would love to see a situation where students could either register when they arrived in Ireland, or that it could be done during maybe orientation, that there were kind of portable booths that Innes could come to the universities. That's probably a bit of a pipe dream, but that's what I would love to see. But look, I totally understand some of the frustrations. And again, if you were an international student who arrived in Ireland and you weren't able to get registered before lockdown 2.0, then there would have been a huge level of uncertainty, because people didn't know when the office was going to open back up, when would they be able to travel and things like that. I think Innes probably did some of what they could in terms of like extending permission to January. Again, I wish that had been done a little bit earlier and offered kind of 6 months, but some of it, I suppose, they're also trying to deal with a Brexit situation. Like, there's so much. The Department of Justice has such an enormous remit, and for the sometimes it like, certainly previously, it felt like immigration didn't get the attention that it required. And I think that really changed about 3 years ago or so. And that I've seen that continue. But it will take, I mean, we are a nation that, like, we exported people around the world. I mean, that's what Ireland did. Like, Ireland just sent people everywhere, right? But we weren't used to people coming to live in Ireland. And it's changing, which is fantastic, because international people bring so much to our institutions, our country, our culture. But I think it takes time for systems to change, and so it took time for the immigration office to change. It definitely seems to me like we moved from baby steps to maybe toddler steps.
But true, because there is always a place for improvement, and as you rightly said, the things that were very impossible years ago, that is are possible right now, and obviously will be improving soon. I'm just imagining a day, because I also been through the same process where I used to go to the office to get my immigration thing done. Just imagine on your orientation day, the Innes is in your university itself, and he'll tell you, okay, fine, one after another, we are stamping the stamps there itself. And the main problem people were facing in Dublin, as they were like sending their passports for the immigration, and there were some news that the passports were being lost and everything like that. Passports were there for like 4 weeks or 8 weeks, so it was a long process. So I just want to tell everyone who is there that there is one article you can go on Babylon's site and you can read about. That is something that Innes has started here on 2nd of December itself, that you no longer need to submit your passport and you will get the immigration soon. So you don't need to submit your passports, and you don't need to wait too much for your passport to be back. So I think that's a very good step, because a lot of students' problems are being solved. Students who wants to go back to their nations, they can now easily plan out their trips pretty soon. So as you said, okay, so 2021. Okay, so 2021. How is 2021? So we have talked a lot about 2020s, like what are the problems, and it's like just 2 days. So 29 days left for this 2020 to get over, and we hope for the best 2021. We want the universities to be back, everything will be back. The clubs should be open, so that after the colleges, people can go out and relax. So what are the 2021 projects, or what are the 2021 ideas that the university have in mind? And will it be a super duper year as 2020 was not, or will it be still recovering with whole 2020 impact?
I think it'll a lot's going to depend on that vaccine. I think we're going to probably know. I think the talk was that we'd probably know by the 29th of December about the vaccine rollout here and across the EU. And a lot will depend on that, because I mean, universities are enormous spaces. Like, they're the size of towns, and so you can't just have people, kind of gathered together in such large groups. But if the vaccine rolls out, then that will change things. And look, I think obviously when it becomes possible to meet again, there will be a celebratory atmosphere. I have no doubt about that. I do think some of the learnings that we have taken from 2020 will hopefully roll into 2021, and we will see an improved student experience in terms of the admin side of things. But it's tough to know. Like, I mean, around about this time last year, nobody was talking in relation to COVID, right? It wasn't until January that people kind of began to talk about it, and was it going to become an issue around the world? So I'm remembering Boris Johnson sent a tweet on New Year's Day saying 2020 was going to be such a great year for the UK. So you can have the best will in the world, but you just don't know. But I'm somebody who ordinarily, right, usually if I'm around and the weather is good, I love to get out for walks and hikes the weekend. A lot of time I'll invite international students coming out. I want to get back to that. I just want to get back to the little things like that, where we can actually meet face to face, talk, go to the pub. All that sort of stuff will be really important. I think more than anything, we're looking for from 2021, rather than any enormous development, it is to get back to the little things, to get back to being able to go to a coffee shop and sit there and have a coffee, to get back to being spontaneous as well. I think that's probably the other thing that really strikes me, is like there will be so many times when you might just meet somebody on the street and you say, oh, let's go get coffee, or let's go get a pint. And you can't do that now. Everything has to be planned out. So I think for me, 2021 is about hopefully the return of the little things and the return of spontaneity.
It's true. So just let's last time for the last few minutes for the webinar. So as you know, the Christmas is coming, and Christmas is like very well celebrated in Ireland. So for the Christmas also, we have an article on our Babylon site where you can see what are the best ways to celebrate Christmas under this COVID-19 situation. I know the COVID-19 situation is there, and Christmas is something that no one wants to miss and want to celebrate it fully. So you can go to our website, you can read this article, that how can you very well celebrate this occasion but also take precautions. So it was really nice talking to you, Colum, and thank you so much for this interview. And we are really delighted for all the views that you have given and all questions that you have been asked and you answered. And it was a great show with you.
Thank you for the opportunity to come on and have a chat. I think Babylon is doing really interesting things. Seems to be a lot happening on your website. It's been delightful to have a chat. Maybe we can do it again in 2021. And just if anyone likes listening to me and my thoughts and my funny accent, I do have a podcast called Adventures in Advising. It's all about higher ed. We talk to students, we talk to lecturers, we talk to support professionals. We're on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts. Check out Adventures in Advising.
Definitely. So guys, do go and check on Colum's podcast. We'll be also listening to all your podcasts. It was interesting having a chat with you. Have a great day now.
Thank you very much.
Okay, you too. Bye.